Hello and welcome to the next episode of The Raging Introvert. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have stumbled across this article, which is, I believe, the mother-lode of media bias and misinformation. It's a New York Times. It's in the editorial opinion section, but as you'll see as we read through here, it's trying to list objectively all of Donald Trump's transgressions, although it presents it here as Donald Trump's Guide to Presidential Etiquette by the New York Times editorial board. Scrolling down, they start off trying to do a little bit of humor. Remember when President Michelle Wolf, I don't know who that's supposed to be, outraged the conscience of conservatives across America by cracking a joke about the press secretary's eye makeup? Oh wait, Miss Wolf is a comedian. Telling jokes is her job. A better example is President Hillary Clinton, who disregarded all protocol and endangered our national security by relying on a private email server to conduct some government business. Hold on, you say? Mrs. Clinton isn't president either? No. As a matter of fact, she will never be president. Donald Trump saw to that. She's been defeated twice, and despite her clinging to the limelight and trying to stay relevant, she's done. Okay, then. How about Barack Obama, an actual president? His disrespect for that station is the stuff of legend. Well, I don't know about legend. There's certainly a lot of criticisms out there. I just did a quick Google search and came across, this is one of the top articles I came across. I don't know who the Daily Signal is. It doesn't matter. There's quite a few articles out there where conservatives are concerned about things he did. 7 times Obama ignored the law to impose his executive will. I scroll down there. It doesn't really matter. I don't care specifically what their concerns are, only that there are people out there who have legitimate, or potentially legitimate, certainly serious accusations about impropriety by President Obama. Now let's see what the New York Times lists as his transgressions. A tan suit, shirt sleeves in the Oval Office, those big, impertinent feet defiling the presidential desk. So, downplaying, then, what could be at least legitimate concerns about former President Obama's transgressions in the office. I noticed doing a quick Google search, I did not find on the New York Times a similar list that the Times did regarding transgressions that Barack Obama did. Probably just a coincidence, just an oversight. President Trump has managed to avoid those particular offenses. His suits are dark, blah, 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 blah. Yet in so many other ways, he is violating Americans' expectations of how presidents should behave, even of how adults should behave, particularly when children are watching. Now, I take a little bit of I have to argue with that a bit. President Trump hasn't really changed, in my estimation, much from when he was campaigning. He's the same person now as he was when he was running for president, and the people elected him to be president. So I don't know if it's actually violating Americans' expectations, because he's acting as he was when the American people voted for him. Yes, Mr. Trump has now been compared to Joseph Stalin by one senior senator from his party. If you look down the link at the bottom there, it's Jeff Flake. So Jeff Flake is retiring from the Senate. He represents the Republican establishment. And yes, Trump is a threat to the establishment. They don't get along. And because of backstabbing liberal Republicans like Jeff Flake, and the Republican base being upset with that, that's why Trump won the primaries to become the presidential nominee for the Republicans. And yes, he's been preemptively disinvited to the prospective funeral of another. Looking at the link at the bottom, we're talking about McCain, another moderate to liberal Republican who is not well respected by the base of the Republican Party, but he is respected by the Republican establishment. Again, Trump and McCain bouted very publicly, and the Republican electorate decided to go with Trump over McCain. And McCain, being a bitter, grumpy old man who lost to Obama, is doing his best to have one last act of defiance before he dies. But most Republicans, usually such vigilant guardians of Oval Office decorum, have remained strangely silent. Well, again, most Republicans realize that the base supports Donald Trump, which is why they elected him for the primaries and helped lead him to electoral victory in the election. Any Republican who wants to challenge President Trump usually finds himself getting destroyed, either by Trump directly or by upsetting a large number of Republican voters and not being reelected. So, at best, it's probably in the interest of Republican politicians to be cagey and silent. So, for the fourth time in a year, we've compiled a list of Trump's more egregious transgressions. So, the editorial board of the New York Times is now, in 1 year, done 4 giant lists of transgressions, which, again, you'll not find for previous presidents. Trump is special. These items don't represent disputes about policy, over which reasonable people may disagree. They simply serve to catalog what Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and all the other Trump-supporting Republicans in Congress and across America, through their silence, have now blessed as behavior befitting a president of the United States. So it's attempting to shame Republicans and try to get them to attack Donald Trump and his actions. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole list, but I do want to scroll just to show you how ginormous this list the Times has compiled is. Just scrolling down. They have nice little graphics too, as you can see. I should have counted them, but there's so many. Actually, when I first got this, I started at the very top of the list, which we're going to start at. I just started looking at the links and trying to find where the spin and misdirection was. And I didn't look to see how long the list was. After I got through quite a few, I was like, boy, this list is taking forever. Then I started scrolling down. I realized, there's no way I'm going to do. I'm not going to do every one of these in one video. It'd take forever. So we'll just start at the top, and we'll go through the first several transgressions that the New York Times editorial page has come up with, and we'll see how accurate they are. So the first one it says is, if you are president, you may now, 1, use your unsecured personal cell phone to call, among others, media personalities who parrot your talking points, and when you're told this is a security risk, refuse to stop, saying that would be too inconvenient. Now, when you go to the link, we come to this article, Too Inconvenient, Trump Goes Rogue on Phone Security. Now, this article's kind of long. To summarize it, it basically says that the president, according to anonymous sources, has at least 2 iPhones, one that he calls with and one that he does Twitter on, and that he doesn't, the government agencies, telecommunications groups don't want him to have these phones. They're not fully secure. The president resists their request to have the phones brought in on a regular basis to check for viruses or hacking attempts. They prefer he doesn't use them at all, but they don't have all the features disabled so that they could be hacked more easily. And again, this is mostly based off of anonymous sources within the White House. Although if we scroll down here, it does say that the president has the authority to override or ignore the advice provided by aides and advisors for reasons of comfort or convenience. But this expert I talked to says they could, quote, doing so could pose significant risks to the country. Now, in this article, the real risk that they're talking about isn't so much that information would be on these phones, because, again, he's just doing Twitter or making calls. The threat would be that maybe they could activate the microphone or activate the camera, and maybe if he has the phone with him during a meeting, during a classified discussion, foreign adversaries could actually get that information. In a way, that's a separate issue. I have a private phone, a personal phone that I make calls with, that I go on the internet with. I have access to classified and restricted information, but I I have to lock up my cell phone before I go into those areas to access that classified information. Does the president keep his cell phones, or these private cell phones, out of the Oval Office? Does he keep them out of areas where restricted classified information is discussed? This article doesn't talk about that at all because they don't know. So instead, they're just going to hint that the president is putting everyone at security risk or information at risk for leaking when they really don't know if that's the case or not. And they also do, this article less so, but other articles scanning about this issue, they try to tie it to Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server and saying, hey, Trump made a big deal of Hillary Clinton using a private email server, and now he's using his private phones, and that's the same thing, and Trump's a hypocrite, and he's making classified information vulnerable to hacking by hostile actors. Oh, says it right there. There is a difference, and that difference is significant. Hillary Clinton had a private email server running actual government business. She had her department and her aides, government officials, doing official email business on her private server. Not only that, some of the investigations, like Harvey Weinstein, or not Harvey Weinstein, it's close enough, I had to go look him up. Not Harvey Weinstein, but Anthony Weiner. Government emails were on a private computer. They should not have been on there. So there were leaks and accusations of information that was supposed to be confidential or secret that had the identifying information removed off of it that leaked out as well. Trump is now being accused of doing official business on these phones. In fact, in this article and here on the list, it says personal cell phone to call media personalities. If he just wants to call a news agency, he's not talking about government secrets. He's calling a media personality. Or doing Twitter. Again, he's doing Twitter as Donald Trump. He whether he has a separate, I don't know if he has a separate POTUS account, a government account, but when he goes on Twitter as a private citizen and does his own account, there's nothing, he's not putting out classified information on there. So it's not a big deal, despite the New York Times' wishes. And it is not comparable to the activities of Hillary Clinton using her cell phones to conduct official government emails or running an email server for official business emails. Second, they say, President may now say that professional athletes who don't stand during the national anthem perhaps shouldn't be in the country. Well, that brings us to this CNN article. Starts off again saying, with some small quotes, again, just a quote right thing in regards to what the NFL team owners are doing regarding the NFL, making the player stand, and then suggesting, again, he's a small quote at first, he suggested those who don't stand maybe, quote, shouldn't be in the country, end quote. And then, later on, we get the actual or more full quotes in context. For example, third paragraph here, we have the whole quote. Quote, you have to stand proudly for the national anthem, or you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country, end quote, Trump said. I don't see what the outrage here is. He's just saying show respect to the country. If you don't respect the nation, if you have a problem with the nation, then why are you here? You should go to a different place where you do respect the nation and its traditions. I don't see, but okay. New York Times doesn't like that. Fire your Veterans Affairs Secretary by tweet, then pick as his replacement the White House doctor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, went to that link. Another CNN article. Says Shulkin says he was fired via Trump tweet. Now, when you first see that headline, you think, oh, that's kind of cold and kind of unprofessional. You're just sitting there in your office, and then boom, one day you see a tweet that says you're fired. Then when you actually read the article, it says White House Chief of Staff John Kelly called to give him a heads up that he'd be fired via a tweet from President Donald Trump. Quote, General Kelly gave me a heads up that the president would most likely be tweeting out a message in the very near future, and I appreciated having the heads up from General Kelly. So the tweet fired you? Camerota asked. Yes, Shulkin responded. So this is a little bit of taking things out of context or blowing them up out of proportion here. He was fired by tweet, but it wasn't as presented here. He was just sitting around and it came out of the blue. The chief of staff called, basically told him, hey, you're fired. But the official, you're going to see it as a tweet. And while I would not tweet to somebody to say that they're fired, or have my secretary or Kelly is not like your office administrator, office assistant. He's a chief of staff, so a fairly powerful person. But I wouldn't just have him call so I could tweet it out. But in the big scheme of things, whether it's a tweet or a handwritten letter or just a phone call, the bottom line is the guy's fired. He knew it was coming. Now, who he picked as a replacement, this is a lot of drama, and I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I'll give the Times that maybe they could have scrubbed this guy better. Don't know. It makes my head hurt reading about it. So, and again, there's a lot of innuendo, anonymous sources, accusations. It's like a freaking soap opera. But bottom line, while yes, he was fired by tweet, this makes it seem much worse than it really was. Hold a meeting with top Justice Department officials about a continuing criminal investigation into your campaign, seeking to force them to act in your personal legal interest. Now that's pretty serious. Let's see, New York Times article. What's that bring us to? Brings us to this article. It says Republican leaders will be allowed to see some information on Russia investigation. Well, that doesn't seem too unreasonable. I thought maybe it's going to be about Trump telling the Department of Justice to stop the investigation or give information to his personal attorneys or something. White House brokered an agreement, intelligence and law enforcement officials that will allow Republican congressional leaders to view some of the most highly classified information. So he's letting Congress exercise their oversight, authority, and responsibility by letting them see information. It doesn't seem... Who are these people? Let's see. Hold a meeting, yeah. Seeking to force them to act in your personal legal interest. Just letting Congress, a separate branch of government, review the activities of government. Is that in Trump's? I mean, that is in Trump's interest, I suppose. It's in it's in the interest of good governance. Devin Nunes, Republican of California, House Intelligence Committee Chairman. House Intelligence Committee Chairman. That's a pretty important position. And the fact that he's getting pushback from the Justice Department and other agencies, he's threatened to hold Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, in contempt of Congress or to try to impeach him if he does not hand over the material. Now, you can't hold, I mean, you probably could, but you wouldn't hold him in contempt or try to impeach him if he was doing what is right legally. He's stonewalling and not releasing information that he should to Congress. And now, not only is Congress, but the executive branch, headed by Trump, are both putting pressure on him. Republican allies of Mr. Trump on Capitol Hill have accused Mr. Rosenstein of obstructing their efforts at legitimate congressional oversight. Now, the Times article said this did not list legitimate policy differences, but gross violations of presidential norms. That's not what that article is saying. That article sounds to me like the executive branch trying to force its own agencies to comply with a congressional request for its legitimate oversight responsibilities. This is not seeking to force them, the Justice Department, to act in Trump's personal legal interest. It's forcing them to act in the interest of Congress and the executive branch and proper governance. So this is completely out of line. Next, falsely claim your approval rating among Black Americans has doubled. What is this? This is a, oh good, New York Times fact check link. Let's see what that says. Well, here's the article. And yet, Trump's talking about approval rating with Black Americans has doubled. We're talking January 2018. The tweet, half misleading and half downright false. So good. We can, hopefully they'll specify which is which for us. Believe it or not, through all this negative coverage, they did a survey of 600,000 people about how Black America views this president. His numbers have actually doubled, said Brian Kilmeade. Mr. Kilmeade was almost certainly referring to a distorted finding from SurveyMonkey. So which is misleading or downright false? You don't know what he's referring to, so you're making an assumption that it's this. SurveyMonkey's results provided in the New York Times show that Mr. Trump's approval rating among Black Americans actually declined from 20% in February 17, his first full month in office, to 15% in December. Okay, is that the time frame he mentioned in his quote up here? That's not what Trump's tweet doesn't say anything about what time frame. Believe it or not, all this negative coverage survey. This doesn't actually mention the time either, although it does have a 600,000 number, which, you know, makes it likely he was referring to this, but doesn't necessarily mean it was. I wonder if we can, if there's something else, maybe a different article or some other stats we could look at. This is Reuters, and I've got the filter on, so it's just referring to Black Americans. From January 15th, 2017, over here, to May 21st, 2008. Just job approval, handling as president. Now, that article had a tweet from Trump in January of 2018. So that's what we'll look at roughly on here. We've got, this is January 21st of 2018, where his approval rating with Black Americans is 12%. And we don't have anything else before that until 9.4% December 19th, 5.6% December 16th. As you can see there, it says 5-day rolling average. In fact, look at this yellow dot way down here. He was at 4.5% on December 17th, 2017. Actually, it's kind of amazing. December 17th, 4.5, and then 2 days later, December 19th, he's at 9.4%. Wait a minute. 4.5, doubling that would be 9%. So actually, in that 2-day period, his support among Black Americans doubled. And that was about a month prior to this tweet. And in fact, the trend continues going up, where a couple days after his tweet, his approval rating among Black Americans was 12%. So, the New York Times, or, well, maybe it was a CNN article, let's see. No, it was the New York Times, who was unsure about which numbers are being referred to. And again, Trump didn't even mention it. He just said approval ratings with Black Americans has doubled, which it did in December, as we saw, and it was going up even higher in January. So the question is, who's wrong? Is Trump wrong? Well, we saw according to Reuters, he was not. The New York Times was wrong because they were trying to figure out where his numbers came from, made an assumption based off some guy on Fox and Friends, and made a mistake, which is fine. We expect the New York Times to make mistakes. They're not honest, and they they have an agenda. Next, tell Americans to observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day with acts of civic work and community service, and then play golf at your private course. Now again, this is talking about what is acceptable now, breaking with tradition, and things that were not acceptable before. So, the article they linked to is Politico. So here we are. Trump spends Martin Luther King Jr. Day at golf course. Blah, blah, blah. He's at the golf course, disregarding his own advice. So he signed a proclamation on Friday calling on Americans to honor the civil rights leader's birthday with acts of civil work and community service. Past presidents have engaged in service activities to honor the holiday. Barack Obama, George W. Bush. That was kind of weird. It's like they only mentioned two. This is apparently like a long-standing tradition, right? I started searching around a little bit more, and this is a garbage news outlet, but Vice News, which I actually thought was kind of funny. Here's what presidents usually do on Martin Luther King Day. Well, that's exactly what I know. I want to know the history of all this great work that American presidents do. Bill Clinton designated Martin Luther King Day as a national holiday in '94. Since then, presidents have traditionally engaged in some sort of public service on the day. So, wait, this is not a long-standing tradition. This is a tradition that has been followed by three out of our 45 presidents. Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Barack Obama. So Trump is breaking with the three president streak of tradition, and that's what they're complaining about. And actually, I found it kind of interesting too. Where's that article? King's nephew, Isaac Newton Ferris Jr., hit the same theme at the White House event. Quote, "It's not a day to hang out in the park or pull out the barbecue grill," he said, which is actually what most Americans do, which is what Trump is. I mean, despite being a multimillionaire or billionaire, whatever he is, the reason why blue-collar workers voted for him is, A, he actually addressed their concerns, and B, despite his money, in some ways he seems more like a regular guy than most of our politicians. And when most Americans on Martin Luther King Jr. Day do go out and barbecue, go to the park, spend time together, just relax after working, that's what Trump did as well. It's a day to do something to help someone else, and that can be as simple as delivering someone's trash or picking up a newspaper for that elderly person who can't get to the end of the driveway. What is delivering someone's trash? I don't even know what that means. Sorry, when I read that the first time, does that mean like picking up someone's trash and hauling it away for them? That's hauling it away. You're not delivering it. I don't want any trash delivered to me. Please, no more trash. Don't deliver it. Anyway, let's go back. Next, tell reporters who question your racial views, I am the least racist person you've ever interviewed. Well, everything Trump says, the media takes out of context and says he's a racist, bigoted, homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, blah, 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 blah. What's Trump supposed to say? I mean, I don't know what he's supposed to say. Well, I know what he's supposed to say. The reporters want him to say, yes, I am racist, I have white privilege, and I'm a monster. He's not going to say that. He doesn't believe that. And reporters can keep asking dumb questions, and they're going to get dumb answers. Next, mockingly imitate the accent of the Indian Prime Minister. Okay, that sounds kind of serious. Let's check that out. This Washington Post article, which, oddly, the link brings me to this. Up to 1,000 more U.S. troops could be headed to Afghanistan this spring. I actually closed this out the first time, went back and re-clicked the link, and it still brought me here. I thought it was maybe a mislink or something, but no. So I had to end up searching. I searched for India. Like, where the hell are they talking about the Indian Prime Minister here? And just down here in the middle of the article, it says senior administration officials said that the president has been known to affect an Indian accent and imitate Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who in an Oval Office meeting last year told him, "Never has a country given so much away for so little in return as the United States in Afghanistan." Which actually is a compliment for Modi, it sounds like. The altruistic nature of the American people to give away so much to help other nations in return for so little. Which is true. It's nice for him to recognize that. But what basically we have here is another rumor. Senior administration officials. So people spreading rumors, and the New York Times is saying that we need to take that at face value and believe it. And I want you to look very carefully. What the New York Times here say on their list? Mockingly imitate the accent of the Indian Prime Minister. However, when you go to the article that they link to, it doesn't say he's mocking him. It says he affects an Indian accent and imitates Indian Prime Minister. Now, I suppose you could say every time you imitate someone, it is mocking. But you know, I imitate poorly people at times. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm trying to mock them or make fun of them. I may just be trying to sound like them for humorous value, I suppose, most of the time, but not always. And mocking sounds very denigrating. And this is not saying that at all. This is the New York Times reading into these anonymous rumors that no one should take seriously. Next up, call politicians of the opposing party treasonous and un-American for declining to stand and clap during your State of the Union speech. Well, he certainly said that. Now, the link brings us to another New York Times article. But despite it saying 2 articles remaining, that's because this was opened first. I'm out, so I can't actually open up anymore. It's not fake news. Don't believe this. New York Times does not let me look at any more of their links because I opened up so many earlier. So instead I had to look for a separate article that discussed this. And I came across this one from The Independent, which is good because it's from out of the country. So sometimes it's garbage, but sometimes it's nice to have someone from outside the country who may not have the same biases. Let's look here. It starts off, President Donald Trump has appeared to jokingly accuse Democrats of treasonous behavior. Wait, jokingly? Maybe I missed it. Did I say it over here? Call politicians of the opposing party treasonous and un-American. I don't mention anything about it being a joke, unlike this news report here. You'd think that'd be something important to mention, maybe. During a speech in Blue Ash, Ohio, Mr. Trump said the Democrats gave off, quote, bad energy, end quote, during the address by failing to even clap at the positive economic news. Well, I mean, if there's good things happening in the country and you don't applaud, you're not happy about good things happening to your nation. I don't know if I'd say treasonous, but it certainly reflects badly and makes it look like the people who are applauding are not rooting for your country. The president called the reception un-American. That's a good way to say it. And went further by saying he would call it treason. Oh, wait, that sounds good. Shall we call that treason? Why not? Okay, so he didn't go further by saying he would call it treason. He said, shall we call that treason? Why not? He said, smiling as the audience laughed. They certainly didn't seem to love our country very much, said Mr. Trump, who's repeatedly made it clear that he loves applause and well, who the hell doesn't love applause and recognition? I want to see the person who likes being booed and jeered. Maybe a heel in professional wrestling or something. So, is this a legitimate criticism? Did Trump call politicians of the opposing party treasonous and un-American after reading that Independent article that gives more context? No. New York Times is garbage. Next up, accuse an FBI official of treason for sending a joke in a private text message that you take out of context. Now, it takes a lot of balls for New York Times to talk about taking people out of context. So let's see what they have on this one. This is to a Wall Street Journal article. However, the Wall Street Journal also has a paywall, and I'm not going to pay for that garbage. So we'll go to Newsweek, which is the first one that popped up in my Google search here. FBI agent Trump called treasonous helped draft Wiener memo that rocked Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. So what it starts off by saying is, it says this agent actually helped with the memo against Hillary Clinton, so there's no way he's not biased. He in fact attacked Hillary, so in fact he may not be neutral. He certainly wouldn't be against Trump. But even though he supported reopening the probe into Clinton's emails, he reportedly sent text messages expressing reservations about making the letter public so soon before Election Day. Okay, so maybe he's neutral. Huh. Wait, what do you have here at the very bottom? The last two paragraphs. That's where they usually bury the unfortunate truth. Strozak, the FBI guy that Trump called treasonous, exchanged his text with FBI lawyer Lisa Page, and the two were having an affair. Some of the messages contained language critical of Trump. Strozak was pulled from the Mueller investigation last year after the text came to light. That should jump out to everybody. Why was he pulled from the investigation after the texts came to light? It wasn't Trump who pulled him. It would have been Mueller, the head of the investigation, saying, you've got to go. You can't be on this investigation because you're compromised. Something he did in these, and it wasn't because of anything else. It was because these messages came to light. So, this guy did something previous to this investigation that made him an improper investigator. He didn't release that information. He hid it from the head of the investigation. And then when that information became public, the head investigator had no choice but to remove him from the investigation. Now, I don't know if that's treason exactly. Trump does have a way with being a little hyperbolic with words. But I can see where Trump would be upset. This is the FBI we're talking about. Yeah, you've got a professional investigator who should have known that what he said was a problem with the investigation, and it obviously was if he was pulled from the investigation, and yet this investigator hid it and kept it secret. That is treason. I don't know about a treasonous act, but it's certainly an improper act, and Trump has every right to be upset with it. And that's it. Again, this article goes on and on and on. Every one of them, at least partially misleading, way overblown, something incorrect, or it's not even inappropriate. Again, there's nothing in my mind wrong with the president saying, hey, people who don't respect the country and don't love the country, maybe they shouldn't be in the country. He's not saying the government needs to throw them out. He's saying if they don't like it, maybe they should go somewhere else. Anyway, let me know what you think. Hey, if you're just crazy enough, you can start reading the rest. Let me know if there's anything down there that's especially outrageous. Maybe I'll do some more selective picking and choosing. But thanks for listening. Take care.